Hey everybody, this is Austin, and I am joined by Tasha and also Ashley again. And today we are also joined by one of our favorite, um, the actor behind one of our favorite characters, Jason Whittaker, and he is voiced by the amazing Townsend Coleman. So welcome, Townsend.
Hey, you guys, how are you?
We're doing great.
Thanks for having me on. This is a bit of a blast.
Yeah, hopefully by the end it'll be a big blast. Okay, I guess we'll start out with Ashley. Want to go ahead and read the first question?
What made you want to start acting?
ah, Actually, ever since I was a kid, I have always wanted to act, and specifically, really sort of be a voice actor, because my dad used to be real into voices and used to listen to a lot of comedy albums when I was a kid that used a lot of character voices. And so I just developed an appreciation for voices and voiceovers and voice acting ever since I was a kid. But I started acting actually when I was in, let me see, about junior high. I was 15 or 16 when I did my first play in, I guess, high school, and have loved it ever since. But I remember in fourth grade seeing a production of Peter Pan, and just somehow that lit me up, and I wanted to be an actor ever since then.
So, going along with that question, did you start out acting just with voice acting or on camera?
Actually, Austin, neither. I started out in theater on stage, so I started doing plays in high school, and then in college, I was actually an architecture major, but then switched over to being a theater major, and did a number of plays at the University of Colorado in Boulder, way back in the years, and 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 that's where I mean I just really developed my love for the theater, and then after college I did a lot of community theater and some professional theater. So my acting really started as a stage actor, and continues to this day. But then I started doing on-camera commercials back in Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up, and started doing some on-camera work back there. And then when I moved to L.A., out here to Hollywood, over 30 years ago, in 1984, I started doing on-camera commercials. Did a few small parts in a couple of movies, but really my voiceover career started back when I was on the radio in Cleveland. I was a radio DJ in Cleveland at about 5 different stations over the course of 10 years in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's where I developed a love for the voice acting, and was doing a lot of voiceovers for commercials, and had been a huge fan of Firesign Theater when I was in high school. So I mean, I was sort of into all aspects of acting, whether it was on stage or on camera or behind the mic.
Okay. Our next question here is, who are some people in voiceover that you look up to or that you try to emulate in your work?
Wow, well, there are lots of folks that I look up to. I don't know that I try and emulate anybody so much, because I think the importance of being an actor is to try and find your own voice, and I no pun intended really, but is to try and be an authentic actor in whether you're on stage or on camera or behind the mic. But there are certainly people that I have looked up to over the years. I mentioned a moment ago, Firesign Theater. Listen, when I was in high school, a junior in high school, the big thing to do was to memorize Nick Danger, Third Eye, was one of our favorite pieces that Firesign Theater did. And so these 4 guys in Firesign Theater were cats that I looked up to hugely. And when I moved out to L.A., like I said, in 1984, I got a chance to meet Phil Proctor, who was one of the 4 guys on Firesign Theater. And boy, I tell you, I was real starstruck, because he is a guy that I've looked up to for years, along with the rest of his brethren. And they're just so amazingly inventive guys and gals too, who are so facile at improvisation, and are so quick-witted, and good writers, are people that I look up to. And I know that Phil's been on Adventures in Odyssey for years, and I love his work on Odyssey as I love his work on everything else he does. But so yeah, Phil's a great example of somebody that I've looked up to for years, and I can't say that I try and emulate him because Phil's one of a kind. But yeah, there are plenty of guys. You know, when I came to town, um, I never really thought much about doing cartoons, but kind of fell into it. And the cartoons that I grew up with mostly were, you know, Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And so, you know, I looked up to guys like Mel Blanc and Doss Butler and Don Messick and Stan Freberg and you know, so many of the great comedians back in the 60s and 70s. And so those were guys that I looked up to. But again, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the work that these guys do, but I don't try and emulate them. First, I'm not an impressionist by any stretch of the imagination, and not terribly good at improv, so I appreciate these guys who are so good at it and are so quick and facile. You know, folks like today, you know, Jess Harnell and Jim Cummings and Rob Paulson and you know, on Odyssey, Corey Burton. You know, I love seeing the work that he does. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the folks that I looked up to back then and look up to now.
Okay. How did you get the part of Jason on Odyssey?
Well, years ago, when not long after I first moved to town, I got a part on a Christmas special, an animated Christmas special called Glow Friends Save Christmas. And I played a Dragonfly in this thing. His name was Dragonflyer and a couple other small characters. And Katie Lee was a character on this as well. And that's where I met Katie and discovered that she was a believer as well. And we kind of hit it off and sort of stayed in touch. And several years later, when they were creating the character of Jason Whittaker for on Odyssey, she suggested me to the folks at Focus. And I went and met with them and met with Paul McCusker and Phil Lawler and auditioned for the part, as simple as that. And I got it. And so we started recording episodes, and I've been doing it ever since. Goodness, I guess now going on, it's a little over 20 years. I think that was in 1994 or so that I started doing that. So, yeah, it was through Katie Lee. Connie.
What's the funniest or most strange thing that's happened during any of the recording sessions you've been in?
Oh, wow. Well, when I try and think of this, the funniest or strangest thing that might have happened during a session, I've got such a terrible memory, and you know, we've been recording so many sessions over so many years. I know that lots of stuff has happened over the years that have just made me howl. But I can't think of anything that comes to mind specifically. However, I will say that these sessions end up being a blast, you know, especially when we have folks on like Jess Harnell. You know, when he does his wootin', man, I got to tell you, I just you know, laugh like crazy because he's so hysterical. You know, and Will Ryan and Katie Lee, and when we get Corey Burton in the studio, Phil Proctor, and these guys, you know, who do so many voices and so many great impressions and are so quick-witted. They're hilarious to just watch them work. And so some of the sessions, you know, many of the sessions end up just being hysterical just because of the antics of these guys.
You join the antics too, I'm sure.
Well, I certainly try, I'll tell you. But you know, very often I end up enjoying being an audience more than a participant.
All right, moving on. What's your favorite type of episode to be in? Action adventure, everyday slice of life, or like the really wacky stories?
Wow, that's a tough one. I would say that of the choices you gave me, probably the really wacky storylines, just because they can get really wacky and crazy, and often have you know, fun, very funny characters in them that can make it fun. I like the action adventure stuff too. They kind of keep me on my toes, you know, just you know, with the pace of the shows and having to, you know, really get into it as an actor in my imagination. Those are great too. Everyday slice of life, you know, tend to be just sort of, you know, normal sessions and kind of fun episodes to sort of sit back and be a part of. But one that you didn't give me a choice of, but I'll throw in there, are the ones that tend to be a little more tender and emotional. The relational ones are storylines that I very much like to be a part of, and are the episodes that I very much like to be a part of. Whether it's a relationship, with a friend or a woman. In Jason's case, say Tasha, or even Connie, for that matter. But or with his dad, with Whit. I really like those episodes because they can dig a little deeper and get a little more emotional and a little more heartfelt.
So I guess you really like the life expectancy episodes, when Connie's mom died, and then Jason started feeling a lot of emotion then too.
Yes, many of those episodes and those kinds of episodes are the ones that I find myself, just as a person, gravitating to mostly and most often, just because they're the ones that really touch on the human experience and shared human emotions, and whether it's grief or joy or fear. These are the ones that I think I find myself just enjoying recording most, because they're the ones that I tap into most just as a person.
In the Green Ring Conspiracy, were you surprised to find out that the stiletto was actually Jason, or did you know that before you recorded it?
No, I didn't know it before I recorded it, and I remember going into that session and being surprised all of a sudden when the reveal, that Jason was Stiletto. And then we had to stop and we had to have some discussion about this so that I could, make sure that I was separating Stiletto from Jason. And so we had to go and, re-record some of that stuff with a little more clarity in mind. But yeah, they kind of sprung that on me, or springed that on me at the last minute. And I love stuff like that because, on Odyssey, really Jason is the only character that I typically play. So I rarely get an opportunity to be a different character, like, Stiletto or the Grinder, for instance. And so those episodes are always a lot of fun for me. Yeah, and that one was particularly fun because of surprise.
Yeah, I remember hearing that, and a lot of people were expecting Jason to show up at some point. And I first heard, I didn't realize it was your voice at first, because usually most people in Odyssey, I can usually recognize their voice even when they're doing other voices. But it took me a while, like, wait, that's Townsend Coleman. And I said, but I didn't think, like, that, you think that's Jason? But when he started talking to Whit personally, like, I get it.
Gotcha.
Of all the women that Jason has met, is there one of them that you think would be a good bride for him?
Well, this is also the one where I could probably get in the most hot water with fans, just because I know that there's a good bit of controversy out there about who the fans think Jason ought to end up with. And so, as I said before, this is a bit like Sophie's choice for me to try and pick one over the other. So I think I'm going to defer on that. But I will say, so wait, this is a trick question though, because you've got your sister Tasha sitting there with you, don't you? And so since Tasha's there, I think maybe I should say Tasha. How about that? I'll just leave it at that, huh?
Yeah, that's the easy way out.
Well, I know that a lot of folks think that Connie and Jason should end up together.
Because we interviewed Steve Burns a couple months ago, and we asked him if he thought that Connie and Mitch should get married. He said wholeheartedly yes, he thinks that they should get married. But for some reason, when we interviewed Katie, we forgot to ask her who she think Connie should get married to.
Anything could happen, couldn't it, huh?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. I think the writers are purposely trying to make it so that Jason is quite a bit older, but anything can happen, I guess.
Yeah, Connie can grow up really, really fast.
Yeah, if she's been young all this time, she can grow up really fast. What is something you would like the character of Jason to do that he hasn't done already?
Oh boy, I don't know. How about skydiving?
Well, his father does.
Yeah, yeah. So it would be perfectly natural for Jason to start jumping out of planes, wouldn't it? He already falls out of tall trees. So maybe falling out of an airplane wouldn't be such a stretch.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that push him out of different vehicles, including planes. But I think that'd be really cool, like him jumping after someone that didn't have a parachute or something. I'm sure the sound designers would love trying to work that out.
Or how about one of those? I'll tell you what. One of the things that I would love to do in real life, so I would love to see Jason do it, is I want to put on one of those wingsuits and base jump. I think that would be such a blast.
Yeah, I think that'd be a little bit harder for them to write for because it's audio, but hey, they're really good at it.
I'll tell you, these guys at Focus who produce Adventures in Odyssey, and the audio and sound designers and post-production guys are absolutely first rate. When I listen to the episodes, I'm always blown away by how good they are because how believable they make these shows sound.
Yeah, they are really great, and I think they've only gotten better over the years. Also coming off of that, do you when you finish an episode, do you usually listen to the final product or not? Because I know some people they don't hear it at all or they don't like listening to what they did. But do you like listening to like the shows after you've done them?
Haha, it's funny you asked that because I just recently did the AIO club podcast with Jess and Bob, and they asked me the same question, and I was doing it with Andre Stoica, and Andre listens to all the episodes because Focus is really great about getting us the episodes, and I tend not to. And certainly not because I don't like listening to Odyssey, but partly it is that I've just never gotten into the habit of listening to or watching most of the work that I do, just because it can kind of make me a little uncomfortable sometimes. I get a little, I don't know if it's self-conscious about it, but I know self-critical, and so I tend to just sort of leave it be. But I certainly have listened to a bunch of episodes, so it's not like I've never heard the show. But it's like, when people would ask me about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I had done for 10 years. And we did close to 200 episodes of that. If I've seen 15 or 20 of those episodes, it's a lot. I just don't tend to watch or listen to my own stuff, really.
So did your kids grow up listening to the show or your grandkids?
My kids did not. They're older, but my grandkids do, yeah. And I've given them sets of Odyssey, and they're getting to the age now where they're starting to get into it and starting to get a kick out of it, yeah.
That's cool. Okay, is it your turn?
I believe so.
Yeah.
If you weren't a voice actor, would you want to be a spy like Jason or something else entirely?
If I weren't a voice actor, which is what I've been practically my whole life, I don't know what I do, but probably wouldn't be a spy. But I'll tell you what I would be really good at is I think I'd be a really good private eye, because I'm really good at just figuring stuff out and tracking stuff down, and so I don't know about being a spy, but being a PI. I think I'd be good at, and I think I'd get a kick out of doing that.
And I'm sure you do a better job than Harlow Doyle.
Yeah, maybe so. Don't know that I'd have quite the character that Harlow has. Will does such a great job as Harlow, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he's, from what I hear, he's pretty spontaneous on a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yes, he is. And that's what I was talking about earlier about, watching these guys at work in these sessions. It's just remarkable to see them on the way they are.
Okay, and Ashley, you get to last. Not the right word, I know. Yes, yes.
Question. There you go. Now say it with me.
Okay. Are there any other current projects you're working on besides AIO?
Well, I work every day as a voice actor. Most of my, I've worked for years in animation and commercials, but also voicing network promos has always been a big part of my career since 1993 when I got the job at NBC being the voice of their must-see TV comedy promos. And so I was the comedy voice of NBC for 16 years until September of 2009. And I also voiced all the late night promos for Jay Leno on The Tonight Show and Saturday Night Live and late night. And so now I voice comedy promos for ABC, and I also voice all the daily promos for Live with Kelly and Michael. So my daily work for the most part is promo and network promo and syndicated promo, and occasionally a little bit of animation still, and the occasional Adventures in Odyssey episode, which I am always thrilled when I get that call from my agent that they're putting me on hold for another recording session over at Salami Recording in North Hollywood. And so other than AIO, mostly my daily work of network promo right now.
Well, I know for a while they didn't have you on for a good while, and I was really happy that they brought you back, and I would get to hear you a lot more in new episodes.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I was a little worried too for a spell there when I wasn't hearing from the folks at Focus because I love working with them so much, and so I'd sort of thought that maybe they were writing Jason out of the show, and that happens in this business. As storylines change and characters change and story arcs change, you can get written out of shows. Your characters can move away or be killed off, whatever. And so I didn't know what was happening with Jason, but then was thrilled when I finally got that call that he was coming back. And now he seems to be back a little bit more, and I hear tell that he's going to be back even more. So obviously, I'm excited about that.
One question talking about that, when an accidental dilemma, did you believe that they actually killed Jason, or did you suspect that they were just using it as a ruse?
Yeah, I didn't know, and I suspected that they were using it as a ruse. But again, you never know until you know. You never really are sure until you get that call that he's coming back. So yeah, it was a little tentative, and I was kind of walking on eggshells there for a while, but he's back.
Yeah, I was a little worried at first, and I was pretty happy when I heard that he wasn't, because Jason's always been one of my favorite characters, and I think some of the best Odyssey episodes were the episodes when Whit wasn't around, when it was just Jason and Jack. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have for you today. Thanks so much, Townsend, for answering these questions and recording with us.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Austin, and thanks, Ashley and Tasha. You guys have been delightful, and I appreciate the fact that you appreciate Adventures in Odyssey so much, and you appreciate the work that we as the actors are doing. It's always a treat and a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much.